Good afternoon, all of you. Good to connect with all of you after some time. Unfortunately, I went unwell at the wrong time. So I'm continuing with economic survey, and we will have a budget discussion also very soon, hopefully on the coming Saturday only. I'm recording these videos. Today is Tuesday. I'm recording this video in the afternoon, say 24th of February. And I plan to take the budget also by this weekend. And I will continue with economic survey sessions, and you will keep receiving them on YouTube. So stay tuned on Next IS channel, and we will keep giving you the economic survey chapters. It is just that I'm not doing it live because fixing a time was not becoming very easy. So I thought, okay, I'll do the recording and share it with you. All right. So we begin with chapter 2 today. We begin with the of economic survey. So that is on fiscal policy. अब इस चैप्टर में ध्यान रखोगे that you will need in this chapter, you will get too many data from prelims point of view. You will also get a lot of material that you can add in your answers in your mains exam if you are writing on tax reform, if you are writing on fiscal stability, consolidation of the fiscal policy, disinvestment of public sector, GST reforms. So, several points you will get in this chapter. I will keep highlighting them to you, but keep it as that in the mind. So, the chapter begins by survey saying that India has had the rating upgrade by 3 different ratings. Standard & Poor is a major rating which has given us an upgrade. Rating upgrade का मतलब क्या हुआ? What does it mean? That Indian government bonds and Indian market bonds will now be taken as a more safer place to invest in the global market. So many global investors will then choose to invest in India. That is the meaning of a rating upgrade. That when my rating is upgraded, I'm considered to be a more solvent country and more people will choose to invest in my country. जब भी rating upgrade होता है तो ये माना जाता है कि ये solvent है, इनके यहाँ पैसे लगाने पे पैसा डूबेगा नहीं. तो rating upgrade तभी मिलता है जब आपके सरकार fiscal deficit control में रखते हैं, paying capacity high रखते हैं, foreign exchange reserves high रखते हैं, inflation control में होता है. So macroeconomic stability plays a very important role in rating upgrade. And survey says it is due to prudent fiscal management, prudent fiscal management. That is one thing. It also says that it is due to, the rating upgrade is due to deficit reduction, revenue buoyancy. So this we will discuss as we go further, but fiscal deficit has been reduced. Fiscal management has been prudent. We have had more capital expenditure, less revenue expenditure. Growth, revenue buoyancy has been high. Tax collection has been happening at a faster pace. Expenditure quality, capex I already told you. And there is more fiscal transparency, as in government has a debt to GDP ratio fixed, and government is continuously highlighting what they have achieved on the previous budgets, announcements and all. So all that means there is more transparency, and due to that we have had a rating upgrade. तो prelims के point of view से ये points याद रख लोगे कि rating upgrade क्यों किया गया इंडिया में. The rating upgrade for Indian bonds or Indian market has been due to these policies. Then they come to central government finances. So they say that most important is that we had fixed a glide path of 4.5%. We had fixed a glide path of 4.5% in fiscal year 2022, and we have been able to achieve those glide paths at the moment. So that is a very big important factor, that we had fixed the glide path in the fiscal year, we had fixed the glide path in the fiscal year 2022, and we have been able to achieve that glide path by 2025. अब glide path का मतलब क्या हुआ? Glide path का मतलब हुआ that how will my fiscal deficit be reduced? Alright, that is the meaning of glide path. So they said that we had kept a glide path, a medium term glide path. So glide path is, glide का मतलब कैसे आप land करेंगे. So it is about controlling fiscal deficit. So if you recall, during COVID pandemic, our fiscal deficit had reached 9.2%, central government fiscal deficit. So a glide path was fixed that how to reduce this fiscal deficit, and government ने उस वक्त कहा था that we will reach 4.5% by fiscal year 2026. Now the budget says we will be reaching 4.4% of 2026. So this target has been achieved, which is quite an achievement because even developed economies are struggling with very high fiscal deficit, while India has been able to control it. So that is some sound management that we can claim. Then the survey says further that if you look at, this is what I was telling you, that the fiscal deficit was as high as 9.2% and revenue deficit was 7.3%, primary deficit was 5.7%. तो revenue deficit क्या हुआ? Revenue expenditure minus revenue receipt. Fiscal deficit क्या हुए? Total borrowing requirement of the government. और fiscal deficit में हम क्या करते हैं? Revenue expenditure plus capital expenditure minus revenue receipt minus non-debt creating capital receipt. तो वो बन जाता है fiscal deficit. और primary deficit क्या होता है? Primary deficit is fiscal deficit minus interest payment. And if you see, all the three have been showing a downward trend. Again, prelims में exam में अगर आया, between 21 and 26, fiscal deficit has been continuously falling. Revenue deficit has been continuously falling. Answer will be true. And in fact, revenue deficit जो है, it is now at its lowest since 2009. And let's not forget that during 2009, we used to be a very buoyant economy because the global markets were growing very fast and India was recording very fast growth. अब revenue deficit के कम होने से फायदा क्या है? Less revenue deficit means you have more resources to spend for capital expenditure. वो कहाँ दिखता है? आप देखिए, the capital expenditure share, this which was only 36 out of 100 in fiscal year 20 has now gone up to 71.5 of the fiscal deficit. कि सरकार जो total borrow कर रहे हैं उसका 71.5% कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर में जा रहा है और जो नॉन डेट कैपिटल रिसिप्ट्स हैं वो 4.8% फाइनेंस कर रहे हैं, लेकिन जो रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट है वो अब 33.4% ऑफ द फिस्कल डेफिसिट हो गया है. इट मीन्स व्हाट? दैट रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट नाउ इज अ वेरी स्मॉल पार्ट ऑफ फिस्कल डेफिसिट, सो दैट अलाउज मोर फंड्स टू बी यूज्ड फॉर capital expenditure. If you see here, in 2020, revenue deficit was a large part of fiscal deficit, which left us with a lot of funds for less fund for capital expenditure. Why is capital expenditure good? Because it allows me to produce more in future. अगर मैं आज capital expenditure ज़्यादा करूँगा तो कल production ज़्यादा कर सकता हूँ, and that will allow my GDP to grow faster, better tax revenue, and I can pay back my debt. So my loans of the government become more sustainable if my fiscal deficit is relatively, if my revenue deficit is relatively lesser and my capital expenditures are high. अगर मेरे कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर ज़्यादा हैं और रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट कम, तो इसका मतलब जो फिस्कल डेफिसिट आज मैं इनकर कर रहा हूँ, आज जो बोरोइंग कर रहा हूँ, उसे पे बैक कर पाऊंगा आराम से. Then of course they give us some examples of revenue buoyancy. So they say that revenue receipts, ये exam point of view से important है prelims में, revenue receipts rose from 8.5% of GDP in the 5 years of 16 to 20 to 9.1% in 22 to 25. और इसमें बहुत बड़ा रोल को प्ले कर रहा है टैक्स रेवेन्यू, राइजिंग फ्रॉम 10.8% to 11.5% ऑफ जीडीपी बिटवीन 22 to 25. लेकिन ध्यान क्या रखोगे, इन 2026 इस साल में ये 11.2% हो गया है of GDP, tax revenue. क्यों? Because we reduced the GST rate, we reduced the income tax rate. So all that has reduced tax to GDP ratio, but still it is not very low and we are doing pretty okay compared to where we were 5 years ago. अब ये buoyancy का मतलब क्या होता है? Buoyancy का मतलब होता है percentage change in tax revenue divided by percentage change in GDP. So if this is greater than 1, it implies that my tax collection is rising faster than GDP, which means my tax base is becoming wider. I'm able to formalize the economy better. I'm able to collect more taxes by bringing more people into the tax net. All that will be when tax is buoyant. So survey ये claim कर रहे हैं that tax buoyancy has been pretty high in India. Then they say, अच्छा ये important है. The share of direct taxes has risen from 51.9% pre-pandemic to 58.8% in the fiscal year 25. कि जो पिछला साल था, अब डायरेक्ट टैक्स टू इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स में डायरेक्ट टैक्स इज ऑलमोस्ट 59%, इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स इज 41%. दिस इज गुड. Indirect taxes are generally regressive, direct taxes are progressive. So that is why direct taxes are now a larger part of the total tax collection. और ज़्यादा गेन कहाँ से आ रहा है? From non-corporate taxes. ये क्या हुए? पर्सनल इनकम टैक्स. अब कुछ लोग ये बोलते हैं कि पर्सनल इनकम टैक्स देने का मतलब गरीब लोग टैक्स दे रहे हैं, पर आप सोचिए भारत में 12 लाख रुपए से कम कमाने वाले लोग टैक्स ही नहीं देते, और जो वेज इनकम में हैं वो तो 12,75,000 कमाएंगे तब जाके टैक्स नेट पे आएंगे. सो पीपल बिलो 12 lakh rupees don't pay taxes in India. People in the wage income group will not pay any tax till 12,75,000. So no question that poor are paying taxes in India. India's average income is 2,19,000 rupees according to economic survey per annum. That is our per capita income, current value 2,19,000 rupees per annum, and our tax begins at 12 lakh rupees. मेरे हिसाब से ये अन्याय है. हम बहुत सारे अमीर लोगों से टैक्स नहीं ले रहे, बट चलिए ऐसा ही चल रहा है. हम कर क्या सकते हैं? जब हम लोगों के खाने पीने पे बात ले आएंगे, महंगाई उतनी नहीं रोक पाएंगे, तो कुछ करना पड़ता है. तो इसीलिए टैक्स की कमी कर दी हमने. बट अदरवाइज इट इज़ वेरी रेयर टू सी अ कंट्री which will not be collecting tax up to 6 times its average income. You know, in developed countries, they collect taxes from 1 by 4, 1 by 3 level of average income. In India, we don't do that. So assuming that even if, because sometimes in newspapers I read that, you know, personal income tax share is rising, which means burden on the workers and poor is rising. Well, people earning 1 lakh rupee per month in India are not poor. They can take themselves as poor, I can understand, but they belong to top 10% of India. So I think this will be a travesty if we say that rise in non-corporate tax means that poors are paying. Poors are not paying. So this consists of personal income tax, and it also consists of the STT that we introduce on shares. All right, these are the non-corporate taxes as direct tax. Their share has been continuously rising and their buoyancy has been quite high. अब ये भी नहीं है कि corporate tax कम बढ़ा है. Corporate tax was, अगर मैं यहाँ fiscal year 2020 लिख दूँ, pandemic से एक साल पहले, corporate tax was 4.5 crore rupees. This has increased to 10.8 crore rupees, more than doubled. So corporate tax buoyancy is also not less. और इस साल में GDP 220 ट्रिलियन रुपीस थी एक पैंडेमिक के एक साल पहले in 2020 फिस्कल ईयर, और यहाँ पे GDP प्रोजेक्टेड है कुछ 360 ट्रिलियन रुपीस. So GDP has increased by 60% and corporate tax collection has increased by more than 100%. So I think we are doing pretty okay even on buoyancy on corporate tax. Personal income tax of course are showing a huge jump, and that is because of more formalization happening. Securities transaction tax are showing a big jump, but that is because of large trading in the share market. But major factor क्या है? Personal income tax, all right, of this high buoyancy. Then the survey says that there is, जो मैं आपको बताया अभी मैंने, expansion of tax base. 6.9 crore people were filing tax earlier in 22, now it is 9.2 crore. Similarly, there is better compliance, better tax administration and rising incomes. So again, from prelims point of view, tax results better due to better compliance, technology enabled administration and rising incomes, bringing more individuals into the tax net. As I told you, corporate tax collection has also showed buoyancy and has been near unity after pandemic. Then the RBI has given a lot of money to the government, you know, or ye again in an RBI, the aggregate profit of listed firms rose from 2.5 to 7.1 trillion, doubling the corporate tax collection, which I have already taught you. Of course, personal income tax year on year has grown 6.8% and corporate tax has grown 7.8%, both of them growing almost at the level of nominal GDP growth rate, showing decent buoyancy. As I've already told you, no tax for middle class, but इसको middle class बोलना ही अपने आप में ट्रेवेस्टी है। मैं जानता हूँ आप में से कुछ लोग गुस्सा हो जाएंगे ये सुनकर, लेकिन भारत एक गरीब देश है। हमारे यहाँ we are a poor nation. Our average income is 20,000 per month. So automatically people earning 1 lakh rupee per month are not middle class. They think they are middle class, but they are not middle class. कुछ लोग बोलते हैं अरे नहीं मेरा देखो खर्चा पूरा नहीं हो रहा। खर्चे पूरे हो रहे हैं, एस्पिरेशन पूरे नहीं हो रहे हैं। अगर मुझे बड़ी गाड़ी चाहिए वो पूरा नहीं होगा। अगर मुझे बेटी को गोल्ड देना है अपने गिफ्ट में शादी में, वो नहीं होगा। नो डाउट अबाउट इट। सो आई डोंट हैव इट्स नॉट दैट 1 lakh rupee means I can spend a lot in India, but 1 lakh rupee doesn't mean I am poor in a country with 20,000 rupees per month income per capita. You know, so calling it middle class is quite a travesty. हम अपने top 10% को middle class बुलाते हैं. Works for the government, works for the media, and works for people. So the rich are taking the resources away from India while acting that they are pro-poor, which is happening. Anyways, अब survey एक बात introduce करते हैं that we are not coercing, it is not punitive. हम लोगों को force नहीं कर रहे टैक्स देने को, हम nudge based intervention कर रहे हैं। और nudge based मतलब क्या हुआ? Non intrusive usage of data to guide and enable. That is nudge. नॉन इंट्रूसिव यूसेज ऑफ डेटा टू गाइड एंड इनेबल। तो हम नज बेस्ड इंटरवेंशन कर रहे हैं जिसमें लोगों को हिंट्स देते हैं, यू मस्ट पे योर टैक्स ऑन टाइम, सी दिस इज द मनी यू स्पेंट हियर, सो दैट मीन्स यू आर इन द टैक्स नेट, एंड दैट वेज मोर एंड मोर पीपल आर and giving messages to them, today is the last day of paying the tax, and that ways more and more people are in the tax net. And they have given 3 examples. This is from mains point of view. आप quote कर सकते हैं, processes of increasing tax revenue through nudge based method. So they nudged the foreign asset campaign, and that led to declaration of more than 29,000 crore rupees in assets in the foreign countries and 1,000 crore plus income. Similarly, they made corrections under section 80 GGC, and that meant that people who had excessively deducted their tax by up to 2,000 crore then came back, reverted and reduced that burden. Similarly, house rent allowance had been overestimated. That was something which was controlled. Similarly, improving TDS accuracy. So, you know, different methods. House rent allowance, nudge ka matlab kya hua? That telling people, look, you have deducted more for house rent than what you should have. And then automatically they gave more tax to the government. Similarly, improving tax deduction at source accuracy. बहुत जगह पे गवर्नमेंट कहती है कि जब आप किसी कोई सामान बेच रहे हैं, जैसे मान लीजिए आप अपने वर्कर को पैसा दे रहे हैं, या बैंक है जो इंटरेस्ट की इनकम देते हैं लोगों को, सो दे हैव टू डिडक्ट द टैक्स एट सोर्स, एंड दैट इफ इट improves, better tax collection can be done. Excise duty and customs duty have gone down. Excise duty has gone down because petroleum prices have gone down, and taxes on petrol has gone down. Customs duty has gone down because import duty has gone down. So indirect taxes share has gone down, direct tax share has gone up. In GST, they say that the gross tax collections reached 17.4 lakh crore in April to December only, which is the highest that India has recorded. And it has been growing 6.7% year on year in spite of, don't forget, in spite of GST rate rationalization in September 2025. September 25 में हमने GST के rates 28% bracket को 18 में कर दिया, 12% bracket को 5 में कर दिया. Many commodities were shifted to 0%, and cess was removed, and now we only have a sin tax of 40% on only 6 types of commodity. On all others it is 18 or 5. And we see, however, that when it comes to nominal GDP growth and GST collection, we see that has been rising quite fast. This is the year-on-year growth, you know, that we are, year-on-year collection that we are having, and growth has been quite healthy except for last year because of GST rate rationalization. So they say that tax base has expanded. क्यों GST में collection ज़्यादा हो रहा है? 60 लाख लोग पहले registered थे, अब 1.5 crore registered हैं. Similarly, survey expects that reforms will help in rationalizing the tax. More people will comply, register and pay their taxes. Also, what is the way forward? This is way forward for GST reform. पहला, reorient the e-way bill system from enforcement to logistics. ई-वे का बिल का पर्पस सिर्फ टैक्स कलेक्शन नहीं होना चाहिए, लॉजिस्टिकल सपोर्ट होना चाहिए, स्मूथ ट्रांजिशन फ्रॉम वन स्टेट टू अनदर शुड हैपन. ई-वे बिल शुड बी अरेंज्ड इन दैट मैनर. Similarly, trust your businesses. That's very important. Trust based and technology driven compliance. Like some dealers can be given trusted dealer membership, and they will be trusted because they have been regular in paying their GST, etc., and they will not be penalized as much, and they will not have to wait long for in the queue and all, and they will be given minimal checks so that it becomes easier to do business in India. ऑल्सो इन जीएसटी रिफॉर्म, इसके ऊपर मैं एक अलग वीडियो भी दूंगा तुम लोगों को, बट जीएसटी रिफॉर्म में जैसा मैं बता रहा था, वी हैव नाउ ब्रॉट इट टू 18%, 5% एंड अ 40% डीमेरिट रेट, एंड this is the third pillar in tax reform after corporate tax cut and income tax reforms. Purpose is boost consumption, reduce living costs, improve compliance and correct inverted duty structure. Inverted duty structure क्या था? Charging more duty on inputs and less on output, and that used to result in a lot of duty on inputs remaining unresolved in input tax credit. That in inverted duty structure means high import duty on input, less on output. High GST on input, less on output. So now if I paid higher tax on input, when it came to deducting my tax obligation from output, I did not have enough money. मान लीजिए मैंने इनपुट पे 10 रुपया टैक्स दे दिया सरकार को, I have paid 10 rupees tax to the government on input, but the tax I have to pay on output is only 6 rupees. Then 4 rupees extra that I have paid to the government did not become available to me because that was not available for input tax credit. So correcting the inverted duty structure has also helped in MSMEs and all. So GST reform ने क्या किया? Lower living cost, boosting consumption, better compliance and correcting inverted duty structure. Now I have given you the list, तुम इसको download कर लेना. I have given you major things that survey has given us on where the GST has been reduced, and we see in agricultural inputs it has been reduced, automobile parts, electronics. So wherever we are focusing on make in India and agricultural goods, we have been reducing this input. For textile it has been reduced, essential goods it has been reduced, medicines it has been reduced, hotels for promoting tourism and all it has been reduced, insurance it has been made zero rated, green goods it has been reduced. So survey says the expected impact will be lower prices, higher affordability, better compliance and more formalization. More formalization means कम rate को देख के ज़्यादा firms अब register करेंगे GST में. Then improved trade competitiveness and domestic manufacturing. Then correction of inverted duty structures in key sectors like textile, fertilizer, मैंने अभी भी आपको समझाया. And then faster automated ITC refunds to ease working capital stress. यहाँ तक कि गवर्नमेंट ने कहा है कि अगर कहीं पर आपका वर्किंग कैपिटल, आपका इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट नहीं भी रिकवर हो रहा due to less taxes on output, we will deliver it into your account to make it feasible for you to keep producing. Then of course the non-tax revenue of center have remained stable at 1.4% of GST. तो नॉन टैक्स रेवेन्यू क्या है? इंटरेस्ट रिसिप्ट, जो सरकार लोन देती है उन पे जो इंटरेस्ट आता है. डिविडेंड एंड प्रॉफिट्स, अब आप देखेंगे दिस डिविडेंड एंड प्रॉफिट हैज जंप्ड अ लॉट compared to where it was, mainly because RBI has been giving huge dividend to the central government. So that RBI dividend is playing a major role in this dividend and profit jumping. Of course, public sector enterprises have also made some decent profit. We will see it on the next slide, and that has also improved things. But majorly it is RBI which is contributing, which I think should be corrected. RBI कितने दिन आपको पैसा देगा? क्या आरबीआई का काम प्रॉफिट कमाना तो है नहीं और सरकार को पैसे देना नहीं है. सो आइडियली वी शुड नॉट बी डिपेंडेंट ऑन आरबीआई टू अर्न प्रॉफिट एंड गिव मनी टू द गवर्नमेंट. हाउ डज आरबीआई अर्न प्रॉफिट? By timely selling and purchase of bonds, by foreign exchange reserve management, but this is not ideally done for profit. This is done for liquidity management, inflation control. So I think depending too much on RBI profit is a bad idea. Disinvestment is something we have neglected a lot. We have hardly disinvested in India in the last 5 years, not even meeting the target once, and maybe because that is because of ideological blocks that government is facing. But I think we should bring it back on the burner. There is something there. Of course, the total non-tax revenue is 5.8 lakh crore. I think if we disinvest a little better, this can rise by another 25%. Then, of course, so this I already told you. Sharp rise in dividend and profits of public sector, higher surplus transfer from central bank, and of course, the improved performance of public sector banks and financial institutions. So this is what I was telling you. The number of operating central public sector enterprises is now 291, and total gross turnover is 37 lakh crore. Profit is 2.9 lakh crore. Dividend 1.39 lakh crore. Now this is good, but out of 291 operating, mind you, central public sector enterprises, we have almost half of them still running in loss. This is what the survey is not highlighting. So if they highlight, they will do a good service to the country, because that way we will be able to understand that yes, many central public sector like in banking, in defense, in electronics, they have done well, but many others are also not doing well. It will allow for a better debate, in the economy. Then non-debt capital receipts, which will be asset monetization, equity sale, real estate investment trust, invest in infrastructure investment trust, all that is the method. And there is an offer for sale in Mazagon, Dock Shipbuilders and Bank of Maharashtra, Indian Overseas Bank. तो सोचिए कुल मिला के मैस जो डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट है वो कुछ ये सब अर्न कर पा रहा है. So it is not huge that we are earning. Yes, monetization of asset is earning us good money. Survey ने claim किया है that strategic disinvestment has proceeded gradually, but this is not entirely true. What government has done is it has sold its shares to other government companies only. So actual privatization, change in structure of holdings has not been observed. This is a reform which is waiting. This has not happened. Then what is the way forward? Strengthen receipts by selectively reducing government stakes. सर्वे अब देखो खुद ही ये सजेस्ट करते हैं कि गवर्नमेंट के स्टेक को कम करो बियॉन्ड मिनिमम पब्लिक शेयर होल्डिंग वेयर फीजिबल. अभी यह है कि 50% से ज़्यादा किसी पब्लिक सेक्टर में शेयर गवर्नमेंट को रखना ही पड़ेगा टू कॉल इट अ पब्लिक सेक्टर. Government will have to keep its share above 50% to call it a public sector. Survey says reduce this limit, make it 26%, and let the government sell its shares to the public, hold the control with 26% shares, and let others also participate in the board of directors and in bringing expertise. But I think again that will be difficult to work with because not many people will be interested in taking share in the government sector if government owns 26% and has controlling stake. But survey has suggested that can be done, and maybe that can be a way forward. Also pursue phased offer for sale towards privatization. धीरे धीरे करके कुछ कंपनीज प्राइवेटाइज कर दीजिए, बट वो होता मुझे नहीं दिख रहा हमारे करंट सरकार में. अभी हिम्मत नहीं हो पा रही सरकार को कि वो प्राइवेटाइज करें. काफी एनिमिकल सिस्टम है अभी. बट फिर मैं रिपीट करूंगा, for rest of the public sector to perform well, government should privatize certain public sector which are in the non-core, non-strategic area, and government itself has agreed to that in its 2021 notification. Then survey also says that revenue expenditure has been controlled. So from 13.6% of GDP in fiscal year 22 to 10.9%, and that is much below the pre-pandemic average also. And how has the consolidation happened? Mainly by rationalizing subsidies. What kind of rationalization? Majorly by using things like direct benefit transfer. The share of subsidies has declined from major subsidies from 1.9% of GDP to 1.1% of GDP. But we are giving free food grains to around 80 crore people, which again, if you ask me, is a travesty. इतने लोग भूखे इतने नहीं है इंडिया में that we should be giving 80 crore free food grains to people in India. 80 crore people getting free food grains in India. Rather, if we can reduce this number and focus more on bottom 50 crore or 40 crore people and give them nutrition, give them better quality food, that will be a better idea. And we can also give direct benefit transfer to people immediately, the first 30 crore. जैसे जो लोग 80 करोड़ से 50 करोड़ के बीच में हैं, people in between bottom 75% to bottom 50% or bottom 70% to bottom 50%, they can be given a direct benefit transfer, and people below 50% can be given food. कारण क्या है? Today also what is happening is we are giving food grains to people and they're selling it in the open market. So if we can shift gradually to DBT, or at least give an option of DBT, we will be able to rationalize it. In revenue expenditure, we see fertilizer subsidy is still a big number, if you see it here, और ये तो फाइनली 1.86 करोड़ निकला बजट में. फूड सब्सिडी 2.28 करोड़ निकला बजट में. तो अब देखिए यही दोनों कितना पैसा खा जाते हैं. खा जाते हैं इसलिए बोल रहा हूँ कि केमिकल फर्टिलाइजर एक खराब सब्सिडी है, ये हम सब जानते हैं. एवरीबडी नोज इट स्पॉइल्स द लैंड, reduces the soil carbon content, it hurts health, but still we give such huge subsidy on fertilizer, which I think is again suicidal, and we hardly spend money on research and development in agriculture. Also, you know, the interest payment expenditure is heavy as a burden for us. This is something the government should take care of. Retire some of the old debts which have been taken at a high interest. कुछ पुराने लोन जो हमने हाई इंटरेस्ट पे लिया, पे बैक करिए उसे, ताकि इंटरेस्ट बर्डन कम हो सके. Our total revenue expenditure is 39 lakh crore per se. As I told you, the DBT has given us a gain which has reduced leakages by 3.5 lakh crore, as the survey says. But they say the challenge is cross subsidy in railway and power. Cross subsidy का मतलब क्या? Charging high from the freight charges in railway and subsidizing the passengers. So we have too many passengers, we subsidize even AC coaches, and that is something which is not correct. And but then freight charges go high, so people use road rather than railway for movement. Similarly, in power sector, we give subsidy to rich households, we give subsidy to large farmers, rich farmers, and we put extra money, extra tax on micro, small, medium enterprises also, by saying that commercial sector will be charged more. तो कमर्शियल सेक्टर से ज़्यादा चार्ज लेने के चक्कर में हम एमएसएमई से भी ज़्यादा चार्ज ले लेते हैं, और एग्रीकल्चर को सपोर्ट करने के चक्कर में बड़े किसानों को भी सपोर्ट कर देते हैं. हाउस होल्ड को फ्री इलेक्ट्रिसिटी देने के चक्कर में रिच हाउस होल्ड को भी फ्री इलेक्ट्रिसिटी दे देते हैं. एंड दिस रिजल्ट्स इन मिसनॉमर्स. दैट इज पावर एंड रेलवे, the cross subsidization program, which is creating a problem. And as I just told you, interest payment is rising a lot. This is something which is requiring some more reforms. So we need to have real-time collections, professional treasury management of short-term surpluses, and process reforms in fund release to improve our expenditure pattern. ये मैंने आपको जैसा बताया क्रॉस सब्सिडी का, आप यहाँ से पढ़ सकते हैं रेलवे और पावर सेक्टर का. इट विल हेल्प यू इन अंडरस्टैंडिंग द पॉइंट. अब सर्वे ने एक सजेस्ट किया है टेक्नोलॉजी ड्रिवन सॉल्यूशन. ये सरकार ने अब इम्प्लीमेंट कर दिया है. क्या है ये? जस्ट इन टाइम अप्रूवल. अब ये जस्ट इन टाइम प्रिंसिपल अप्रूवल प्रिंसिपल क्या है? दैट पहले क्या होता था, द गवर्नमेंट विल सैंक्शन द मनी टू यू इन एडवांस, एंड इफ यू लेफ्ट इट अनस्पेंट, इट रिमेन्ड अनस्पेंट, and the money will then be wasted. Borrowings had already been done, and you know the interest costs will rise. Just in time principle is the money will not be given on the budgeted amount alone. The money will be given as you make the expenditure. So earlier it was given as a credit. Now you can debit it from the account as and when you need it. पहले पैसा पहले दे दिया जाता था, अब आपको जब जरूरत है जिस डिपार्टमेंट को, वो पैसा विड्रॉ कर सकते हैं. लेकिन अगर ज़रूरत नहीं है, अगर उन्होंने खर्च नहीं किया, तो पहले से पैसा विड्रॉ करके अपने पास रखना ये अब अलाउड नहीं है. इससे बहुत इंटरेस्ट बचता है, लोन लेने की ज़रूरत बचती है, और खर्चे जो है वो ज़्यादा रैशनलाइज्ड हैं. Just in time principle saves interest, saves the purpose of possibility of loans, and makes expenditure more rational. That's a very good change we have done. Also another change, अब ये सारे पॉइंट तुम कहाँ लिख सकते हो? Just in time, tech driven supply chain of PDS, in steps taken by government for fiscal consolidation. अगर कभी कोई सवाल आया, what are the steps taken by government to rationalize revenue expenditure? What are the steps taken by government for fiscal consolidation? These points can come very handy. So इसमें सरकार ने क्या किया है? Almost 250 crore rupees have been saved by just making sure that there is better rationalization of place where this godown is and from where you are making procurement for food security. So make it from closer place, release it, so transportation costs go down, storage costs go down without hurting the farmers. So, they say 50% reduction in transportation distances and 35% lower CO2 emissions. In capital expenditure, as I have told you, it has been continuously rising. एक term government survey use करते हैं, effective capex. So effective capex is capital expenditure done by the central government plus grants and aid given by central government to state government for capital expenditure. So capital expenditure done by central government plus grants and aid given by central government to state government for capital expenditure. याद क्या रखोगे तुम? Continuously rising trajectory from around around 1.9% of GDP to more than 4.3% of GDP, and as a percentage of total expenditure it has gone up from 19% to 30.6%. Very important, keep it in mind. And they say that grants in aid has supported housing, Jal Jeevan Mission, so PM Awas Yojana, Jal Jeevan Mission, and so on. So the purpose is now give grant to states to create assets rather than for meeting regular expenditures alone. Then of course the capex composition, majority they say more than half is on road, railways and on that is road, highways and on railways. They account for over half of the total capex, road, highways and railways. Other than that, there is money given to state governments for defense, for telecom, for housing and urban affairs and so on. एक बात और ख्याल रखोगे, कभी कभी मैं देखता हूँ लोग सवाल पूछ लेते हैं, is defense expenditure revenue expenditure or capital expenditure? Both. If I'm spending on buying a tank, capital expenditure. If I'm spending on paying salary, revenue expenditure. ये prelims के point of view से आप दिमाग में रखेंगे. But majorly क्या याद रखना है? Our massive expenditure is on road transport and railways. They take a major share of capital expenditure. Alright, they are taking a major share of capital expenditure. Then of course they talk about state government finances. अब यहाँ पर क्या याद रखना है कि जो central government के transfers हैं to the state, अब देखिए state share in central taxes continuously rising from 9%, 9.5, 11.3, 12.9, 14.2. Centrally sponsored schemes continuously rising, barring a slight fall here. Finance Commission grants has gone down to the state government and other grants and transfers have gone up. So moral of the story is that if somebody asks you, is the government's grant to state government rising? Answer is yes, continuously rising. Why are the state governments complaining? 3 reasons. Number 1, their expenditures have gone up a lot, which ideally they should not have done. And hence obviously जब आपके खर्चे बढ़ जाते हैं तो लगता है दूसरे का पैसा भी मुझे मिल जाए. So people are complaining with rising expenditure not compensated by enough revenue. Number 2, यहाँ पे genuine grievance है. States say that central is giving us money under centrally sponsored scheme, but then we don't have the discretion to choose where to spend. It takes away our discretionary expenditure. And number 3, states' own inability to raise their own resources because they have not been able to impose tax in agriculture. They have not been able to impose housing taxes seriously. So their own lack of revenue source is also becoming a challenge. So these are the factors why state governments are complaining, even though the share of state government and central government tax collection is rising continuously. Then they say that the 15th Finance Commission had recommended 1,47,000 crore grant covering revenue deficit grant, local body grants, etc. And due to that, in 26 also the state governments got the money. But survey एक बहुत important बात बताते हैं कि सिर्फ money transfer करने से growth नहीं होता. The states which have focused on capital expenditure have grown much better. If human capital is focused on, they grow much better rather than if they focus on short-term gratification. So a Ladki Bahin Yojana, Mahila Samman Yojana can give you short-term gratification, but educating the girl child, skilling the women, creating factories in the rural areas, promoting better quality technologies, promoting better connectivity to developed portions, all this will give much more upliftment to people, which the state governments have to focus upon. Then they also say that 15th Finance Commission had recommended a borrowing ceiling of 3% और additional 0.5% allowed है अगर स्टेट पावर सेक्टर रिफॉर्म करेंगे। अब अगर स्टेट ने नेशनल पेंशन सर्विसेज में कंट्रीब्यूट किया तो उसके न्यू पेंशन स्कीम में, तो उसमें स्टेट को 69,000 करोड़ एक्स्ट्रा भी allowed है। So the purpose is to give states the flexibility to borrow more for pension scheme and to borrow more for electricity reforms. And they say that but the state average has climbed to 3.2% of their state GDP. जो स्टेट का एवरेज फिस्कल डेफिसिट है वो 3.2% है ऑफ स्टेट जीडीपी। जो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट उन्हें लोन देती है, दिस इज स्टेट असिस्टेंस फॉर दिस इज स्पेशल असिस्टेंस टू स्टेट्स फॉर दिस स्पेशल असिस्टेंस टू स्टेट्स फॉर कैपिटल इन्वेस्टमेंट। ये सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को लोन देते हैं up to 1.5 lakh crore to all the states at 0% interest for 50 years. So survey says that अगर इसको हटा दें, इस लोन जो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट ने लिया है और ये लोन दिया जाता है, दिस लोन इज गिवन फॉर कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर, तो सर्वे कहते हैं अगर इस लोन को हटा दें तो फिर स्टेट का फिस्कल डेफिसिट 2.8% पे आ जाता है। बट देयर इज अ लार्ज शेयर ऑफ बजट बोरोइंग, public sector borrowing by state public sector enterprises, which we should be worried about. The state discoms, state budget. So this is something where we need to come clean. The state governments, Punjab, Bihar, Jharkhand, these are states which are in trouble at the moment. To some extent, even Tamil Nadu now. These are state governments which are heavily indebted or getting indebted. They should get careful that indebtedness doesn't rise much. Of course, you will see again a peak here because of COVID pandemic, but otherwise state government deficit is now here at 3.2%. They also say that the revenue balances have been deteriorating. This is a worrying sign कि जो state की revenue collection है वो अब in 2019, 19 states were revenue surplus. That is, their revenue expenditure was more than their revenue receipt. Today only 11 states are revenue surplus. One big reason is a lot of populist freebies that have entered the picture in the last 4-5 years. अब इसका नतीजा क्या होगा? हो रहा है कि जो टैक्स रेवेन्यू स्टेट के गिर रहे हैं, स्टेट का शेयर इन सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट टैक्सेस बढ़ रहा है, बट ओन टैक्स कलेक्टेड जो है वो गिर रहा है। हाँ, ये जरूर है कि own tax collected गिर रहा है, मतलब growth rate has not been happening at a faster pace. Ideally you would expect 15-16% growth in states own tax revenue. That has not happened. और जो बढ़ा भी है वहाँ एक चिंता की बात है। स्टेट के ओन टैक्स रेवेन्यू के मेजर सोर्सेस क्या हैं आप सोचिए। व्हाट इज द मेजर सोर्स ऑफ स्टेट्स टैक्स रेवेन्यू? पेट्रोलियम टैक्स, इट कंट्रीब्यूट्स टू इन्फ्लेशन, कंट्रीब्यूट्स टू हाई ट्रांसपोर्टेशन कॉस्ट, इंक्रीजिंग द लॉजिस्टिकल कॉस्ट। स्टैम्प ड्यूटी makes land acquisition costlier. Another tax is electricity tax. This is where state tax collection has risen, but again we should get worried because ideally states should try collecting taxes from rich farmers, wealthy house owners in cities, and that way they will become better off compared to otherwise. So the revenue balances have deteriorated. The own tax revenue has increased, but the expenditure has increased, even further. All right, this is the data point that I have given you. Now, as I told you, under SASCI, government has increased the loan from 12,000 crore to 1.5 lakh crore, and states have already taken around 1.2 lakh crore out of it. It's expected that in February-March, this entire 1.5 lakh crore will be taken away. तो ये स्पेशल असिस्टेंस फॉर स्टेट कैपिटल एंड इन्वेस्टमेंट का SASCI स्कीम का फायदा क्या है? पहला, स्टेट की फिस्कल कैपेसिटी बढ़ गई, दे गेट ईजियर लोन्स फॉर कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर विच गिव्स देम सम मोर मनी फॉर रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर, easier loans for capital expenditure, so some more money for revenue expenditure. And since it provides interest free loans, so no extra burden on state for 50 years, and the allocation has been continuously rising, and this is showing some positive offtake from the states also. It is through untied and reform liked components. It is balancing flexibility, has untied component. जैसे in fiscal year 26, out of 1.5 lakh crore that we are giving and central government is giving, 68,000 crore is untied. The state governments can spend it whichever way they like. 80,000 crore is reform linked and sector linked, and 2,000 crore for those states which have exceptional revenue shortfalls. So that is the, ये again prelims के point of view से important है, अपने दिमाग में रखोगे that how is this 1.5 lakh crore being has been distributed. So the state capex has gone up, even though अगर हम सिर्फ बिना SASCI के लेते तो state capex would have come down, but because of SASCI, state capex has gone up, and lower income states have been able to get better support from SASCI. So that is where the quality of expenditure comes in, revenue expenditure by total expenditure, and we see that states' quality of expenditure has been worsening, and you know the if you look at the capital outlay out of proportion of total expenditure has been falling. This is something we should get worried about, and this is mainly because states have committed a lot of money in salaries, pensions, interest and populist schemes. जैसे सैलरी बढ़ाई है अपने एम्प्लॉयज की, बट उनकी प्रोडक्टिविटी भी बढ़ाई है. So if the productivity of the employee is higher and then you increase the salary, you will be easily able to recover the revenue sufficient to pay the salary. But we see deterioration of performance of productivity in state government, but the salaries have been rising. Then we look at, then survey does a box on unconditional cash transfer. जैसे जो मैं कह रहा था लड़की बहन योजना एंड ऑल, तो अनकंडीशनल कैश ट्रांसफर सर्वे बोलते हैं देयर इज अ रैपिड एक्सपेंशन estimated at 1.7 lakh crore in the fiscal year. There's a 5-fold increase in last 3 years. आज से 3 साल पहले चले जाएं, it used to be 30,000 crore, 35,000 crore. Today it is almost every state is now giving it. I was surprised that even Tamil Nadu is increasing the amount, while Tamil Nadu is giving such great opportunity to work for its women, educate its women. Tamil Nadu is a model state on that. Still they are giving extra money in this scheme, so it becomes lazy. ये क्या है, हम आपको पढ़ाई नहीं दे सकते, हम आपको रोड नहीं दे सकते, आपके बच्चों को अच्छी शिक्षा नहीं, अच्छी स्किल्स नहीं दे सकते, हम आपको पानी नहीं दे सकते, चलो जी 2000 पकड़ो, हमारा जान छोड़ो. You understand that this is these kind of schemes. If government does its job of governance, they will not need these schemes. People won't need it. It is better that we make somebody capable to earn 10,000 rupees per month, 6,000 rupees per month, 8,000 per month, than to give them 2,000 per month and then keep them in the low level equilibrium. Survey भी कुछ ऐसा ही बता रहे हैं. वो बोलते हैं that the estimates are placing it at between 0.1 to 1.2% of state GDP, and they provide immediate consumption support, no doubt. You get immediate consumption support, but scale and persistence threaten fiscal sustainability and medium-term growth. Labor records will go bad. You know, they may reduce female labor force participation rate and tend to crowd out capital expenditure. क्योंकि जब इस पे इतना खर्च होगा तो कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर के लिए पैसे ही नहीं बचेंगे, स्कूल की बिल्डिंग बनाने को पैसे नहीं बचेंगे, सड़क बनाने को पैसे नहीं बचेंगे, और जब फीमेल्स को आप कुछ पैसे दे देंगे, आप उनको इनकरेज ही नहीं करेंगे कि वो भी लेबर फोर्स में पार्टिसिपेट करें. They also say that internationally it has been observed that if it has been conditional, जैसे उन्होंने एग्जाम्पल दिया of Progresa Oportunidades in Mexico and Bolea Familia in Brazil, they say that make it conditional. If you send your children to school, we'll give you money. If you come for nutrition schemes, we'll give you money. Then it has been productive, but unconditional has always meant less productivity. So overall, the survey is concluding that states should reprioritize their budgets, focus on capital expenditure, and unconditional transfers should be reduced. As I've already told you, the revenue collections have moderated, revenue expenditure has grown a lot, resulting in revenue deficit by a very large margin. And if you have high revenue deficit, we have already discussed it, your capital expenditure will be low. अब वो आते हैं डेट प्रोफाइल ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट, दैट इज द डेट टू जीडीपी रेशियो. सो इफ यू सी सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट्स डेट रेशियो, it has increased from it. So in fiscal year 19 it was relatively low, during at around 50 odd percent. During COVID pandemic it jumped and became pretty high, and now again gradually it is sliding down. So you know, why is debt management important? क्यों लोन लेना, कम लोन लेना जरूरी है? Why should government take less loan? Survey gives you 3 reasons. One, how do you manage your debt? Keep borrowing cost low and stable. उस वक्त लोन लीजिए जब इंटरेस्ट रेट कम है, और उस वक्त कम लोन लीजिए जब इंटरेस्ट रेट ज़्यादा है. टेक मोर लोन when interest rate is low, less loan when interest rate is high. Then mitigate rollover interest rate and currency risk. Make sure that you have money in your hand before you have to pay rollover risk. You should not be requiring always to roll over your bonds. Make sure currency fluctuations can be managed, and make sure that sudden interest rate hikes can be managed. And deepening government security markets means allow more and more participation by people in giving loans to the government. But most important is consolidate your debt, reduce it. So central government has set a target that by 2031 the debt will be brought to 50% plus minus 1% of GDP. Now, of course, I've already told you that government is on track of achieving 4.4%. There is credible debt management, and at the moment central government's debt to GDP ratio is around 56% in the year 2025, and surveys saying we will bring it down to approximately 2026, sorry, and in 2027 it is suggested to be 55.5%. This is central government debt to GDP रेशियो. सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट का डेट टू जीडीपी रेशियो अभी थोड़ा दिख रहा है, और ये टारगेट है कि 2031 तक उसे 50 प्लस माइनस 1%. इसका फायदा क्या होगा? इफ सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट टेक्स लेस डेट, देन सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट विल इशू लेस बॉन्ड्स, which will mean there will be less crowding out and more scope for capital expenditure even by the private sector, and the cost of borrowing in the economy will not rise. There will be no liquidity challenge. Then of course they say that survey suggests we can't go back to FRBM Act because there is global uncertainty, so credibility will be undermined. हम set करते हैं फिर achieve नहीं कर पाते. It reduces government's fiscal freedom because अब जैसे कोविड पैंडेमिक अचानक आ गया, if there is a sudden pandemic, sudden war, Trump's tariff, you will have to increase your fiscal expenditure. What to do? So FRBM Act 3% used to kind of constrain that, and we have hardly met the target. Only once we have met it. So survey says it's a bad idea. So what is the new target? Debt to GDP, and that is to be achieved by 2031 at 50% plus minus 1%. So in this case government is flexible that okay, if GDP is rising fast I can take slightly extra debt, if GDP is not rising fast I can reduce my debt. Also, if there is a geo-economic environment where there's sudden pandemic or war or oil prices rising, government can give us support. Also, there will be a return to a rule-based regime, and globally, you know, every country follows it, debt to GDP. They don't follow fiscal deficit targeting. So that way also it will be useful. So they say that what will be the benefit of it? The debt management has been prudently done in India. The fresh debt issuance is to time the market. कि जब मार्केट में ज़्यादा लिक्विडिटी है तभी लोन लें. मार्केटेबल सिक्योरिटीज नाउ अकाउंट फॉर 65% ऑफ लाइबिलिटीज. मतलब अब सरकार के पास ऐसी लाइबिलिटी हैं जो मार्केट रेट पे डिटरमिन हो रही हैं, मार्केट से डिटरमिन है. तो उस केस में जो डोमेस्टिक मार्केट है उनमें जब इन्फ्लेशन कम होता है, गवर्नमेंट्स बोरोइंग बर्डन गोज डाउन, द स्ट्रॉन्ग ग्रोथ रिड्यूसेस द बोरोइंग बर्डन, देयर इज एम्पल लिक्विडिटी. Also, we see that the maturity is now 19.1 years. So there's sufficient time for government to pay back its debt. There is no immediate threat कि अचानक सरकार पे 91 जैसा कोई crisis ना आ जाए. That you know that government doesn't have money to pay its debt. 19.1 year is the weighted average maturity. Weighted average maturity का मतलब क्या है? Attaching weights and checking the average maturity of government borrowings. तो कुछ borrowing 2 साल में हो जाएंगी, कुछ borrowing 50 साल में जाएंगी. तो मिलाकर जो average है वो 19 years का है. And also that 27% of the debt are maturing over 5 years. Also the floating rate debt are 4.1%. So interest rate risk is reduced. Most of the debt is fixed rate debt. Most of the debt is maturing after 5 years. So there is no immediate threat to India's system. The foreign exchange risk is low. External debt is only 2.6% of GDP, and that also has been mainly taken from World Bank or New Development Bank or Asian Development Bank. So they're institutional loans, nothing much to worry about. So overall, we see that we are doing pretty well with respect to debt profile of the central government. The state government's health doesn't stay that good Their debt to GDP is 28.1%. Ideally, it should be 20%. It's 28.1%. And the interstate variation is very high. Some states are highly indebted, some states have very low debt. We also see that the state development loan pricing shows weak risk differentiation due to narrow investor base. अगर कल को कुछ झटका लगा मार्केट में तो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को झटका लग सकता है बिकॉज दे आर टेकिंग बोरोइंग्स लोन्स फ्रॉम वेरी फ्यू सेट ऑफ पीपल. इफ दे एक्सपैंड देयर मार्केट, target common people, issue it in the institutional system, they will be safer that by chance if some institution is in trouble, they will still keep getting their debt. So 15th Finance Commission has emphasized that the state should be more transparent in disclosing what is their actual fiscal situation, their financial position, and that will help in better quality debt management of the state government. Of course, they will also need timely, granular and standardized state level data. Granular ka matlab point by point. At each point you should have a data. An investor base should be broadened. More and more people should invest in the state. Secondary market should be there for the state government loans. Then more people will participate and state government will have a broad sense of revenue, broad sense of borrowing, and they will not be dependent on few institutions. Now, general government finances, the survey says that if you look at general government means state plus center. So they say that now they still remain above pre-COVID level. So in pre-COVID time, we saw that gross revenue deficit was relatively lesser. We also see that gross fiscal deficit was relatively lesser. The gross revenue deficit has come down. Fiscal deficit is still, slightly higher than what it was. Also, the outstanding liabilities of central plus state government is still around more than 82%, which is still higher than the pre-COVID level. Pre-COVID level, the outstanding deficit was below 75% of GDP. It is still above 84%, but we can't help it. It had reached 92% in the COVID pandemic days, so it can't be helped much there. Then, yes, one good thing about India is that we are fiscally consolidating very fast. डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज भी जितनी जल्दी अपना कंसोलिडेशन नहीं कर पाए, अपने डेफिसिट को कम नहीं कर पाए, हम उस लेवल पे जा रहे हैं, उनसे भी जल्दी अपने डेफिसिट को कंट्रोल कर पा रहे हैं. सो दैट इज गुड न्यूज फॉर इंडिया दैट वेज आवर मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक स्टेबिलिटी लुक्स इन control. But I will repeat, we will have to go back to disinvestment. State governments will have to be encouraged to disinvest. We will have to encourage more workers' productivity in government sector, and we will have to encourage tax base increased by levying tax on all rich of India, irrespective of their profession. If we do all that, we will be in a better shape here, because better tax collection will mean less debt, and less debt will mean less crowding out. Of course, in conclusion and outlook, the survey says that capex increase and fiscal consolidation are good news for India. States have also advanced their capex scaling. Because of SASCI mainly, there is better targeting of subsidy. Outcome-based design should be developed. State level indiscipline can spill over into sovereign borrowing costs. That is, interest rate for all government loans can go up. We should be careful. Local body finances should be strengthened. In this budget, they have taken steps for encouraging municipal corporations to issue bonds and take money. And GST 2.0 and personal income tax reforms with digitalization in tax administration are set to broaden the tax base, reduce compliance cost, hopefully better revenue in future. This is on fiscal policy chapter in economics survey. I will try keeping it precise like this. This will be available for download in the description section. You use that. All the best to all of you. I hope to keep meeting you frequently now. God bless you all. Bye-bye from my side. And thank you for keeping patience with me. Thank you.